Hi folks, I'm Tristan from NoiseGate. Today we're taking a look at the KORG MS-20V by Arturia. It's one of the big new additions to their V Collection 9 package, and that track we will just listen to was put together using nothing but MS-20 plugins. I mean, there were some effects thrown in there for a bit of extra measure, but all the sound generation was by MS-20. So all the drums, all the synths, the arpeggio, even some polyphonic pad stuff. So it's a testament to just how versatile not only the plugin, but also the original MS-20 was. So I'm just going to spend a bit of time talking about how the MS-20 plugin works, and then I'll go through some of the sounds we used one by one and talk about how they're put together. So let's get stuck in. Okay, so we're looking at the MS-20V plugin here, and one of the things that made the original so versatile was the fact they had these two filters, so a high-pass filter running into a low-pass filter. And the filters had a lot of character, a lot of bite to them, and that's probably the most well-remembered thing about the synthesizer. And they actually changed the filter circuit throughout its life cycle, and Arturia are kind enough to include both filter variants here for us to choose from. And they do sound very different. One of the tricks people like to do with the MS-20 was tie a rubber band between the two filter controls to turn them both at the same time. But conveniently, there's a link switch, so we can just do that automatically here. So let's just set them to something interesting, offset like this, add a bit of resonance, and then we can turn on the link. Get those nice vowel, vocally sort of sounds. You can even put it in opposite mode, so it turns them in opposite directions. And let's just have a listen to the two filter variants, because they do sound quite different. And here the first one has a lot more bite to it. Okay, now let's talk about how modulation works, because that's very interesting. So another thing that made it so versatile was the fact that it's semi-modular on account of this big patch bay on the right-hand side. And if we look beneath the filter controls, we have two modulation depth controls for modulating the filter's cutoff frequency. The top one is labeled MG, which is modulation generator. That's what they call the LFO. And beneath that, we see EG2, which is the second envelope. Let's take down the sustain. I might just put this in re-trigger mode. Okay, but each of these amount controls has a second bit of text next to it. The top one says TEXT, the bottom one says EXT. That refers to the patch bay here. So TEXT is total external, which is this socket here. You can see these three modulation controls light up when I highlight that socket. So whatever we run into this socket, we can use to modulate all three of these destinations. So you can take something like VCO2's output, run it into the total input, and now we can use the second oscillator to modulate both the filters and also the oscillator's frequency if you want to. For really nice aggressive sounds like that. Another really cool part of the patch bay is this external signal processor. So we can take, for example, a signal and run it into our plugin's sidechain input, and whatever audio you run in there will appear here at the external output. And then you can run that into the signal input and do a variety of things with it. I'm going to use VCO2 again as our audio source. Let's run that into the signal input, and then we can run that to a variety of places. Let's, for example, run it into the filter section. Good for those aggressive sort of big feedbacky sounds. We can even take the entire output and run it into the signal input to create really kind of chaotic feedback. Which is kind of cool. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's go and look at some of the sounds I used and see how they work. Starting off with the very first one here. All of these are just modified factory presets, so you can find these sounds easily if you want to. This is sort of a lo-fi Arpeggiator sound. Let's just have a listen to it by itself quickly. Okay, so we have a sawtooth wave and a square wave laid together. Nice simple sound, but a lot of the tone is coming from the effects section. So we head to the nice multi-effects section, For starters, we have distortion, and then a bit crusher to add even more kind of lo-fi to it. So here's without the distortion. And then here's with the bit crusher. Okay, nice simple lo-fi sound. And then I've just automated the modulation depth to kind of make it more bright at different parts of the song. Okay, nice, cool, simple sound. Let's move on to the next one, probably the most characteristic MS-20 sound in the song, which is the sweep bass sound. It's a really aggressive sound. Let's just listen to it by itself first. Okay, it looks like there's a lot happening here in the patch bay, but really there's not a lot of activity. Most of the sound is coming from just that twin filter section. Again, we've got them slightly offset, and they're linked together to get those really aggressive vocal-like sounds. Then again, there's a bit of distortion in the effects section, but yeah, most of it is coming from just that filter section. And then, let's look at one of the pad sounds. So of course we now have a polyphonic MS-20 with 6 voices of polyphony. And this is one of the sounds I used. Okay, nice soft sound with a bit of a slow attack. But there's something kind of interesting happening with the sound. Let's take a look. Over here in the patch bay, particularly in the signal processor section, we can see the entire output is run into the signal processor and then fed back into the filter section, which creates a lot of feedback. However, the signal processor has its own filter bank as well, so it's got a low frequency cut section. You see, if we take down the low cut, all that body comes back in. It's got this feedbacking sort of howling sound to it. But if you cut out all the bottom end, it adds a nice bit of just kind of body to the sound. Okay, so without the feedback, it's just a slightly weaker sound. Here it is with the feedback. So that's a cool kind of interesting bit of sound design going on there. All right, with all that down, let's move into the drum sounds now, because this is one of the more interesting sides of things. First of all, let's just have a listen to the kick drum by itself. Pretty simple kick sound. I'm also running through Ableton Live's drum bus, but let's turn that off and take a look at what's going on in the sound here. So the first thing you'll notice is that both our oscillators are off, so the sound is generated just by the self-oscillating filter section. So this is the same sort of sound design as the KORG Volca kick uses. It's a self-oscillating MS-20 filter section. And you can come up with all sorts of different sounds just by balancing the different filter cutoff frequencies, playing around with the envelope decay time, as well as the modulation depths. So let's increase the decay time a little bit. And maybe add some more modulation to that high pass filter. More of a clubby sort of sound there. So you can spend a long time just fine-tuning these sounds. I found something that was pretty simple, and then just ran it through Ableton Live's drum bus for a bit of extra tone shaping. Roll off that top end a bit, add a bit of boom as well. So that's cool. Next, let's move on to the snare sound. So this is an interesting sound. Again, I'm running through drum bus. Let's turn off drum bus and just listen to the snare by itself. All right, again, a pretty simple sound, but this sound is possible because we have these two filters to play around with. The top filter, sorry, the low pass filter, is giving it a lot of that top end kind of crackle. And then we're using a really resonant high pass filter on the other end to add a bit of body to the sound. Okay, it just right adds a nice kind of woody element to it. And then again, we're running noise into the signal processor, then back into the filter for a bit of extra feedback to add a bit of extra body to it. And last of all, let's take a look at the hi-hat. This is one that I actually use the sequencer in. So first of all, let's just listen to the hi-hat by itself. Let me just take off some of those effects so we can hear it a bit clearer. Okay, if we take a look at the sequencer, I've taken the sequence length down to 3 because the synth is playing a 3-note arpeggiated sequence, so it's made a 3-note hi-hat sequence as well. And you can see the 3 sequencer lanes are being routed to modulate the 2 filters cutoff frequencies and the amplifier to create this sort of off-kilter rhythm. And then you can play around with these and just set them to random interesting positions to come up with interesting rhythmic sounds. Okay, and then I ran it through a sidechain compressor triggered by the kick drum to give it more of a straight ahead 4/4 sort of groove. And here's what it sounds like with the compressor. Sounds a bit weird by itself, but once you layer it with the synthesizer and with the drums, it makes a bit more sense. Okay, hopefully I've given you a bit of an idea of just how powerful and versatile this plugin is. It's a lot of fun to use, plus Arturia have embellished it with all these fun extras like the 6 notes of polyphony, sequencer, all the different filter variants, plus there's a great tutorial built in, and of course it's full of presets for you to explore to help get your head around how it works. Okay, so we're just going to play the track for you now. It's a bit of a Kavinsky Daft Punk inspired track, so enjoy and thanks very much for watching.